In the last video, if we open up our actions here, we're working with AS Transitions 01.FLA. If we open up our actions, we'll see that we imported the tween class and the easing classes, and then we've basically attached our first movie clip, our home movie clip, to the stage. And once that's attached to the stage, we've created a tween where that movie clip is animating on. So it starts off invisible, as we see in line 10 here, where we've set the alpha equal to 0. It starts off invisible, and then with our tween, we animate it onto the stage. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to create the code that will allow us to click on the rest of our buttons to cause the other pages to animate on. But what we want to do is when we click on the About Us page, we don't just want the About Us movie clip to animate on. We want the home movie clip to animate off first, and then once that has animated off, then we will animate the About Us page on. So that gives us a little bit more flexibility since we're working with ActionScript here. We don't have to worry about sticking to the bulky timeline. So let's come up here and let's create our code for our About button. So I'm going to highlight this and get rid of, get rid of the comments, maybe. Well, I'll just get rid of them by hand here. Okay. Now we still want all of our buttons to have event listeners added to them, but we're going to change the way that this functions. Instead of calling on all of these different home click, about click, contact click, we're going to just call one function called onClick. And then when we call on that function, we can use the current target value within that function to point to whichever button was clicked on in order to call that function, and we'll explain that a little bit better in a moment. But for now, let's just deal with the About button. So when we click on the About button, we want to run this onClick function. So let's come down here to the bottom and create a function called onClick. Now inside the parentheses, since this function is being triggered by an event listener, we have to put an event variable inside the parentheses here. So we can call this whatever we want to. We can call it event. I like to call it E just to keep it short. E colon, and then it's triggered by a mouse event. So we'll type mouse event here, and we'll just put that inside quotation marks. Inside parentheses. And then this function itself is not going to return any values. So we'll type colon void here. We'll go to the next line, type our opening parenthesis or opening curly bracket, skip a couple lines, and put our closing curly bracket. And then everything that we want to occur when we click on that button is going to occur inside the curly brackets here. Okay, so when we click on the About button, we want the home movie clip to animate off, and then we want the About movie clip to animate back on. Now, we're going to have to change the way we're doing this in just a second, but for now we're going to do this the easy way. The first thing we want is for the home page to animate off. So let's just highlight this line of code here, this tween. We'll copy that. We'll paste it. And instead of my tween, let's call this off tween since we're animating something off the stage. So we've called it off tween, and we want it to fade out. Now right now, inside the tween, we have the object being tweened, the property of that object that we're tweening, the easing function we're going to use, and then we have the starting and ending value. Right now, the starting value is 0, or invisible, and the ending value of our alpha is 1, or fully visible. So we just want to swap those two numbers around. So instead of 0, 1, we'll have 1, 0. So it's going to start off with an alpha of 1. It's going to be fully visible, and then it's going to animate off to an alpha of 0. So it's going to become invisible. So when we click on the About button, it's going to cause this to happen. Actually, right now, if we click on any of these, and I just realized that there's an extra T in there. If we click on any of these buttons, that onClick function is going to run. So right now, we can actually click on any of these buttons to see this tween animate our home page off. So if we test our movie just to see if that works, we'll click on About Us, and home page animates off. That's fine, but that's not really what we're going for. Once it animates off, we need to animate the About button, or the About movie clip. We need to animate that on. So we're going to go to the next line here, and we're going to create an on tween. But we're not going to do that until the off tween has finished animating. So we're going to add an event listener to our off-tween. Off-tween.add event listener. And there is a class called tween event dot, and then if we scroll down here, we have something called motion finish. So we're going to double click on that. Tween event dot motion finish, comma, space. So when the motion of this off tween has finished animating, whenever it has fully animated and it's off, then we want to trigger something else to happen. So let's create a function called on tween. And in the on tween function, we're going to cause something else to animate on. Okay, so let's make sure we have everything here. Now, this is not going to work. We're going to get an error if we try to test our movie right now because this tween event class needs to be imported. So we're going to come up here. We'll go to import fl.transitions.tween event, semicolon. So now we've imported that tween event class. Now we can use it down here, because all of these tween classes are not available by default unless you import them. Okay, so when the off tween, which is this tween we created up here, when that has finished animating, we're going to call on a function called on tween. Okay, so function on tween, and this is being called by an event listener, so we need an event variable here. So we'll type tween event. It's not going to return any value, so void. And then we'll type our opening and closing curly brackets. And then when this motion has finished, we want the about page to animate on. So we'll create a new tween here, var. We'll call this one tween on, since the function itself is called on tween. Tween on tween equals new tween. We're going to animate the about us page, but first we need to attach it to the stage. So actually, you know what? First we need to remove the other movie clip from the stage once we finish animating it. Because once it fades out, we want to take it off the stage. We don't want it to be there anymore. So on motion finish, we first want to remove that movie clip from the stage. So remove child, and then in parentheses we'll type in home. Okay, then we want to add a new child to the stage. So we need to create a new variable here called about, page about equals new page about. And that's that linkage class name that we gave it whenever we edited those linkage options in the library. So we've created that new one. We're going to give it an alpha, about.alpha equals 0. We'll give it the same x and y coordinates, so home.x equals 20. Home, I'm sorry, not home, this needs to be about. About.x equals 20. About.y equals 60. We're just using the same values we had up here. And then add child about. So we've added that to the stage, and now we need to animate it on. Okay. So how do we do that? We create a new tween. Inside this tween, if we delete that opening parenthesis and type it again, then we can get this pop-up code hint. The first thing we need is the object being tweened, which is the about page, so about. And then the property being tweened, so alpha inside quotation marks. The easing function we want to use, strong.ease out. Don't need the parentheses there, comma. And then the starting and ending value. So we're going to start off with an alpha of 0. We're going to animate on to an alpha of 1. Then we want it to take 1 second, so we'll type in another 1 there, comma, true. Okay, so now when we click on the About Us button, the home page will animate off, and hopefully when that has finished animating, it will run this function where the next page, the About page, animates on. So Control Enter to test that. Now when we click on the About Us button, the home page animates off, and then the About Us page animates on. Very good. And that works fine. However, we have a problem. This still isn't very dynamic. If we click on Contact now, you'll notice we get some errors. And we won't really talk about those errors just yet because we'll see in our code that we have a lot going on here that doesn't work. If we close that and then test our movie again, you'll notice that even if we click on the Products button, the home page animates off and About Us animates on, because we haven't made this very dynamic. I just wanted to show you how this is going to work, how the tweens are going to interact with each other. And now that we understand that, we can go into this code and kind of tweak it a little bit in order to make it work like we want it to. So we'll do that in the next video. Let's go ahead and close our actions here. We'll go to File, Save As, and we'll save this as ASTransitions02.fla. Click on Save, and we'll move on to the next video.